Welcome everybody to the Art Workshop. My name is Christopher Epling. Thanks so much for tuning in today to Pike TV. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully we put something together here that I think you're really going to be interested in. We've looked in the past on the Art Workshop at different types of applications of color. That's a big fancy way of saying, how do we color something? Well, there's all kinds of different ways. We've looked at watercolor, we've looked at paint, we've looked at colored pencils, we looked at crayons, we've looked at markers, tons of different ways to add color. Part of color, though, is also that word hue. We talked about it. H-U-E. What is hue? How does hue apply to color? We used a scale chart to show you. You have a blue that's a dark blue, and then you have a blue that's a light blue, and all the different blues in between those two are hues. Hues are usually of one color, one shade of color. You could think of it that way. Well, also with color, though, you have to think of gray or black or white. There's a hue for those as well, and it runs from black to white, and everything in between are variations of gray. Gray's a color, even though a lot of times we look at something, we see it in black and white. We think, well, that's not color, but black and white is a color. They're both used in art all the time in various different ways. Now, my background really is in illustration, and with illustration, we use a variety of color, but we also use hues of black and white, and you can do a lot with gray. Gray can show light and darkness. It can show, even distance or perspective. You can get that effect using scales of gray. Now, there's different ways you can use color and apply gray from watercolor, all the ones I mentioned, paint, colored pencil. There's variations of it, but today we're going to be focusing on one sort of application that deals with these markers that you see. There's different brands of them. There's the Copic or Copic marker, and then there's also the Prismacolor. Now, there's variations of brands of this. We're not saying one brand's better than the other. Now, there are brands that cost more than other brands, and that's something you have to take into consideration when you're purchasing or looking to purchase a colored marker. Now, for an art marker, an art pen, that's what we're going to be calling these because that's what they are. There's paint inside of here, but the paint is more of an ink-based paint. It's more of a fluid-based paint. It's not as thick as what you'd think acrylic would be or oil, but it's not as loose or dense as watercolor either. Ink is a real special type of application for color because you can add water to it to get different effects, different hues. I'll show you a couple of examples today. Now, there's a few things I want to reference. I want to reference two books that are really, really special books, and the first is Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Now, Scott McCloud is a cartoonist. Now, my background, illustration and cartooning, I always like to look at other artists' work, and I like to see how they're doing their work. Now, back in the early 1960s and 1950s, and even all the way back into the early Marvel, the golden era of comics, as they call it, a lot of times, cartoonists would not share their techniques. Jack Kirby and all the greats that existed way back in the day, they kept their techniques really, really close to shop. And over the years, certain techniques have gotten out. People have learned how to do certain things that before they really didn't know how. Scott McCloud, now in this era of information shared at your fingertips, you go to Google and you type something in and you can find out a wealth of knowledge about it. Well, Scott McCloud has compiled this book called Understanding Comics. And Understanding Comics, if you're interested in how comics are created, how do you use color even in comics to get those effects like I talked about, such as distance, perspective, or even scale. All these things can be looked at and consumed and digested and then put into your memory banks for later. Books like this is really, really an asset to comic creation. Another book, going back to one of those greats that we mentioned just a second ago, is Will Eisner. Now, Will Eisner created graphic storytelling, and graphic novels as they're called, which are really just really large comic books. But Will Eisner was the first, I think, in my opinion, to start to use this medium in a way that's outside of just goofy, weird, strange, funny comics. He told real stories. He told stories about growing up in the ghettos and in the slums of New York. What it was like growing up in these different, mostly Jewish populated boroughs. And he talked about this and he drew about it and wrote about it. And this has nothing to do, though, with Spider-Man or Captain Marvel. This is dealing with real life issues, real life things. And we talked about this before in the art workshop. We referenced a book called Mouse by Art Spiegelman dealing with the Holocaust. His father survived war-torn Poland, came to America, told his son about growing up in that and dealing with that as a young man in Poland. And Art put that together in the format of a comic book. Comic books get a bad rap a lot of times because when you think of the word comic, well, the first thing you think of is funny. But it's not. It can be used in a lot of various ways. Now, I'm working on a book right now that is funny, and I don't care to say so, but hopefully it will be funny anyway. It's a different take on monsters and what we think of as monsters. And I brought a page of that today to show you and to share with you. Now, this is one of the drawings from the book, okay? And in this, you're going to see that there's a lot of color going on. Now, this is 2 pieces of watercolor paper put together, joined at the seam here, where it used to be, with glue, with paper glue, stick glue. And what I've done is I've combined these 2 pages together, and I want to show you a little bit about my process. We talked about process a minute ago, and we're going to get to the color application of things in a second. Now, the very first thing that I'll do before I get to this finished product is I'll pencil it out. I'll sketch it out. So I'll take a piece of paper. Now, this is prior to having any ideas of what this is going to look like. I'll take a piece of paper, and what I'll start to do is I'll take a pencil and I'll start to sketch. Okay, I have an idea. Now, my idea is that people are watching a movie in a movie theater, and on the screen there's a monster. So how do I show that? Well, the first thing I did was I drew kind of just really rough. I sketched out the movie screen, which is here. Okay, I said, all right, so there. I have sort of a square. It's really rough. That's going to be my movie screen. Well, if I have a movie screen here, what else am I going to have? I'm going to have people's heads. So I'll draw circles representing heads of people in the theater. You know, you have different shapes for heads. You may have a big head, small head, depending on age. For this first row in the back, I got these circles for heads. But then also, though, there's people in front of them. So I may draw some circles in front of these circles. They're going to be smaller in general because of scale. Remember, perspective and scale. What's closer to you looks bigger. What's further away looks smaller. So then I have these circles representing people's heads. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, maybe on the side of the screen, you have these curtains, right, that hang down. So I may draw these lines representing these curtains. Now, I have a movie theater. That was my goal, a monster on a movie screen. So the next thing I might do now is think about, well, what does the monster look like? We talked about the circle method all kinds of times in here, and I love this method. So I'll draw a giant oval. Now, notice that the oval's not complete down at the bottom. You can't really see the rest of this oval. That's because the monster is on the screen and it's cut off here. So there I have this shape. Then I start to build on this shape. I might say, well, here's where the mouth will be. I'll have this shape here to represent, there's the mouth. Okay, I have an eye here. There's one of the eyes of the monster. I may put another eye here, make this one a little smaller. Maybe he's squinting that eye. Okay, give him a couple little horns at the top because he is a monster, right? And then I have this general shape down. I may add, okay, well, I'm going to put an arm here, so I'll draw this shape here. Just a circle, just some lines representing where the element will go. The element in this case being his arm and his hand. And then in the background, I may have a spaceship. So I'm going to draw this this shape to represent a saucer. In the background here, it's not perfect. It's just to get an idea, right? So then I may draw some landing pads. Now, once I have this general idea of what it is I'm drawing, okay, I may go back through then and I start to refine that a little bit. I start to put details in it. And if you were to peek behind this, what I brought in today to show you, you're going to see what happened prior to coloring. So I'm going to peel this back here a little bit if I can. And you can see that I have this sketch. See that? It's a sketch of the final piece. So what I was hoping to to do is sketched out on paper. And what I will do, if I can do this without ripping it, and I may end up ripping it, but you'll get, well, let's just focus on this side, I guess. So I lay this down then on a giant light box. Now what a light box is, I build it from Lowe's. I got wood, I got some fluorescent lights, and some plexiglass. And I built this light box. And when you turn that light box on, you can imagine just taking this piece of paper and putting it up to a window pane on a sunny day. You could take watercolor then, lay it on top of it, and you can see underneath it, it comes through. Now I'm tracing, which is cheating, but I'm tracing my own work. So that's technically not cheating. That's just working a little bit faster and hopefully smarter, right? So I lay down the watercolor on top of the light box. Then I start to actually trace what I'm doing, refining it every step of the way. So from that first piece where I have this, just a bunch of shapes going on, lay that on the light box, put a piece of paper on top of it, trace over that. Keep doing that about, I say 5 or 6 times, or however many times you need. And then you get to this final piece. Then I start to put color on it. Now the first thing that I did is I traced every bit of this in blue ink. That was the first step. Second step, then I started to add color. I used gouache paint, or gouache, I can't really pronounce it. It's G-O-U-S-C-H-E, I think's how you spell it. Probably wrong, but it's a type of paint that's like watercolor, and it's in between watercolor and acrylic. Then I used actual watercolor, so you get these effects up here where this looks like splashes of water and color, right? So that created the piece. So what I thought we would do today, and I'll show you one more real fast from that series. This is a drawing of a monster, and he's eating a bridge. The story behind this I'll share later on. It's still being kind of fleshed out, but you get the idea. It's a book of monsters, right? So today what we're going to do together is create this. And we're going to look at color application using a grayscale with those art pens I talked about in the beginning. So grab a piece of paper, you'll need a pencil, and we're going to go through this sort of fast, but follow along with me, okay? Now the first thing we're going to do is start out with the eye. So trace out the eye with me. It's a circle. We have that there. There's our eye. You can put a little pupil in there too. Over beside the eye, I want you to put this shape that almost looks like a saucer, okay? Like this. But notice that it cuts off. You can't see all of it. This eye is squinted. I love to see what I'm drawing while I'm drawing a reference, so I'll put this off to the side a little bit so you can see. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put these 2 lines right in the middle here, and notice it's at a little bit of a slant. See that? Because he's squinting this eye here, right? And you can put these lines in to represent him squinting. Over here we have some lines making up this eye too. Okay, now you can make some eyebrows in there, putting a few little lines. He looks mad. Put a little pupil inside of this one. Okay, now we'll come down just below this and we put a straight line. Okay, now we're going to put some jagged teeth. Remember in the first one it was just this oval mouth, right? But we refine it. Put these little shapes that look like little triangles. I'm using a mechanical pencil right now. Any pencil will work. As long as you have a pencil with an eraser, you're good. Now put a couple of shapes at the bottom to represent his stomach down here, and we should have general shape of his face. Now we can work on the head. Come with a straight line right above the eye going up. Now you're going to curve this around. Curve it around, okay? Stop about right there. Here's where we're going to place our first horn. Put the letter C in there. Bring it up to a point and connect the other end just like that. You can go ahead and add the other horn in there too. Just a general shape for horns. They don't have to match. They can look a little bigger, one bigger than the other. It's fine. He's a monster. It'll work. Bring this line coming down the side of the head. A straight line coming out. Another straight line coming out, but this actually connects up here. Almost connects anyway. So these 2 lines are not parallel, but they're pretty close, okay? Once you get to this point, we're going to do 2 lines coming up. Notice they're getting, they're wider apart at the bottom and they closer together as you go. Now, for the hand. For the hand, you're going to draw a straight line coming up, just like that. Then you're going to draw what I call a baby carrot, all right, which is just this little shape, another little shape for a finger here, and one more here, okay? So there we have 3 fingers, okay? Then we're going to put a thumb in there. For this though, you're going to draw this shape that comes out, almost like the letter C. You're going to draw another little baby carrot here, just like that, and then you're going to seal it off, right? Now for the other arm, come over here, just underneath his chin, and draw 2 lines just as you did before, there and there. Just the same, these lines are going to come up, almost connect, but they don't. Then you're going to draw the letter C, and a baby carrot just like you did on this thumb. The C is here, and then the baby carrot bending up and coming down. Then you're going to come on the other side and draw that straight line here. Now above the thumb, the line comes up like that. Then you're going to draw more series of these little baby carrots, as I like to call them. There's 3 of them here, right, for 3 fingers. And there you have the other hand. Okay, now we got to finish the body coming down the side. Now we started off with our monster, but we got to include the movie screen too, right? So what you're going to do for this is you're going to come over here to the edge of your page, use a ruler if you have one, and draw this straight line coming down, then a straight line going across. This is the movie screen, right? You can add the curtains in. Now the curtains are just a series of these straight lines coming down. You could do a few of them, add a little bit of shape in there to make it look almost like a curtain, right? So now we have the monster and we have the movie screen. What we're going to do now is work on the heads of the people in the theater. So down at the bottom, put the letter C, out from it a straight line, okay? Another line coming out but going down, and stop. Where you stop, you're going to put 2 parallel lines, just like that. Okay, this is going to be the nose. He's wearing glasses, 3D glasses. His head comes up, over the top like that. Now you can put some hair in here. And this is just a series of jagged lines. Notice I've brought them out to here and down the back. And the chin. That's all we're going to do. Now we've got another lady here. She's got a lot of hair. It's curly. So we're going to just draw a series of these cloud-like little squiggly lines, okay, to represent her hair. All right. Now for the next lady, we're going to draw a straight line coming down like this. Not really straight, I don't guess, but it curves. Another line curving down. And then up at the top, you're going to put a series of these little shapes like this because her hair parts in the middle, right? All right. Now we're going to work on another man's head. Here we're going to put an ear, letter C, backwards letter C. Put a little shape on the end of it, right in the middle. Okay. Looks like the letter C. Straight line coming out from the ear. Draw 2 lines coming down from that one, and then another line coming up to connect to the ear. Once we have that, we're going to draw a line coming in just a little bit here, okay? And then we're going to draw the rest of his head. And we'll give him some hair. For the hair, you're just going to draw a series of these jagged lines that wraps around, comes down to the bottom, and then the chin, okay? Now we're also going to put a little boy here, so let's draw the letter C for the ear, another little piece of the back of the ear you can see. The glasses are going to come up, 2 parallel lines, bring that back into the ear, bring this piece over just a little bit, the head comes up. Now we're going to draw the head of this figure first, which is this giant, almost like a letter C here. Then we're going to do the chin. Now we're going to work on the hair. For him, we're going to give him some spiked hair. So we're going to do these series of lines coming up from the top. Put a bunch in there. Follow your line around, this line you created. Follow it around. Okay, keep adding a few more. He's got a lot of spikes going on. Then we'll put some dots to represent he's got a buzz cut. Okay, put a bunch of those in there. Then for the rest of the heads in the movie theater, we just need to put some shapes. Okay, we're going to darken those in later. So now we have the general idea of the movie theater and the monster. If you wanted to put a saucer behind him, you can. Okay, again, you can't really use a ruler for this, so this is where the eraser is going to come in handy because you're going to have to get these 2 ends to match up fairly well. Then you put the door of the saucer in the background if you wanted, with the little landing pad coming down. It's a little different than mine. For the original, I moved it over, but for the purpose of this, we're going to keep going. Okay, and then we got a couple of landing pads we can see here. Can't see the other one. Now we're going to go ahead and put the debris, the dirt in the background, going all the way around. Just a series of jagged lines. Okay, so there we have our character. Now before we start adding any of these markers, the art pens. Now if you don't have any of these at home, you can use, if you have ink, you can put a little bit of water in the ink. It'll work well. But these come in these series of percentages, and if you looked really close on here, you could see 40%, 30%, this is 50%. What that means is the higher up in percentage you go, the more ink that's in this pen, so the darker it's going to be. The hue is going to be closer to black, the higher the percentage of the pen, okay? So I've got a few of these out here I'm going to use in a second, But first, I'm going to speed ink through this. So what this means is I'm going to ink the lines that I have already on the paper with a pen. So if you're at home and you're following along, take your pen and ink all your pencil lines. Trace over your pencil lines with me right now, okay? Then we're going to stop and we're going to put some of this onto the page using these art pens. So let's go ahead and get started with inking our drawing. Okay, so hopefully you've inked along with me at home. You have all your lines traced in. Now I did leave out something from my original, which are these buildings in the background, but that's okay. We're going to focus just on applying these art pens to our piece right now, okay? I have enough material here to do that in. Now I'm going to start out with a low percentage. So I'm actually looking for a maybe, let's see what a 10% looks like. So this is a 10% marker, and you can see here, based on this, you hardly can see a 10%. It's almost like putting nothing on there at all, right? But then when we jump up though, if we jump up a little bit here to like a 40%, you're going to see a much different take on it. You can start to see this now a little bit more. Well, maybe we try this one. I think that one's probably out. Here's a 40%. Here we go. So you can start to see now the color or the hue of this gray. You can see it more, right? So if we put this on the arms here, coming up the side, you can see how that starts to look like shading. Now these pens are really neat in the sense that they blend really well on top of themselves. So if I make this line coming up and down the side of this monster here, when I go back in a minute and put more of the same gray or a different percentage, it's going to blend really well. You notice how I'm going now over top of certain areas, leaving other areas blank or without color or white, okay? And I'm doing that because a little bit later on, I'm going to put either a darker or lighter hue of this color on here, right? So I'm going over, just basically going over certain areas of the drawing right now, not all the areas. And I missed one little line here. I'll go ahead and put this in of his arm. There we go. So you can see how this works. Now, if a movie theater is a bright screen, okay, we know that, then all the light is going to be coming out towards the people. So that means the backs of the people's heads are going to be darker than the front, right? So we can start to put in a little more hue of this color towards the backs of folks' heads here. So you notice now that as I go towards the front of the drawing, I'm not putting any hue. I'm just drawing in the back. And this is actually going to be darkened in even more in a second. One thing about tracing in a pen though, and you can see what's happening here a little bit, whenever I start to color over top of some of these areas, the pen is actually blending in, it's smearing, because the pen is, of course, the ink is wet, and now we're putting something else that's wet on top of it, and you can see what kind of happens. If we jump up to a 50% now, we can start to see a significant difference in this hue. And as I get out towards the borders of where I applied the 40%, I'm going to start to not put any hue down. And this really helps to give the effect that the light is coming from the front and towards the backs of the head. So in the back here, put more than the front. These art pens are really helpful, and I wanted to show this today because we've talked a lot about color, and we talked a lot about how color works whenever you use hues of certain colors. But what happens when you just use gray? Gray is a color. Yeah, it's black and white. It's not, as flashy as the one I showed you at the beginning that I did with all the different colors. But it does give a certain effect that I think is really nice to a drawing whenever you just use a certain shade of gray. Now I'm going over towards the backs here. Notice that I'm staying away from the front, and I'm just putting color as I go, really loose Okay, I'm not trying to be really technical with this. I'm just having fun putting splotches of color where I think it would be. All right, now inside of the monster's mouth, of course, this is going to be darker. We may even make it even more dark. But now, once I have this line, I could go back over where I've put the color and I can add more to it. And that's what I'm doing now, okay? I'm going back over top of the gray, over top of the 40%, even in areas where I'm not, I didn't put any of the 40%. And I want to use this sparingly because this is actually going to be colored over more in a little bit. We'll try to get all this in time. We covered sort of a lot here today, but I think it's good to see how these colors are used, right? And you know, you could go in, now the light's coming out, of course, so you could put in some shading in between the folds of the fabric here. If I took my time with this and colored in each little step solidly, not just sort of scratching it on, you could see how this would blend a lot better. But for time purposes, I'm just wanting to get this finished at least so you could see. Now notice I'm still using this little scratchy method, and I'm going over the back here to the debris and just trying to get that filled in over top where the shadows would be. And then also inside the mouth, of course, here in a second, and around their heads. Now this is a 50%, and what I'm going to do now is jump up even higher than that. I think I'm going to go up to, this is a 80% now, right? And for the 80%, this is going to look almost black, I think. Yeah, it does look almost black. But if you could see this in person, you'd be able to tell that this is actually gray, right? So we're going to color around the heads here, where the main part of the screen is, getting all that filled in. Now at home, if you have markers at home, what you could do to get this effect, pick one or two or three colors that are similar to one another. So shades of blue, you could do this in shades of blue, green, whatever color you want. But remember that you have to do it in the same color to get the effect. So it's hues, right? So you're selecting certain colors that are of the same, on the color chart of the same color, but different hues, okay? So we've got this darkened in now towards the bottom. You can see how that's starting to pop out more, right? You can actually see how the light resembles that there's light coming in. So, you know, if we had more time, we'd finish this up with these markers. I love using these markers. They work really well, and you know, they're fun to play around with to see what sort of effects you can get. Please, if you want to share some of the artwork that you've created, you could go to the holler.org, okay, theholler.org, and you could send in your work or your examples, and we'll be able to take a look at those and share those here on the show. I really wish I had more time to fill in things for you, but we're running out of time quickly. It goes by fast. Every time we have so much fun creating these pieces together, I know, but you know, it's something that if you love to draw and you love to create, please continue doing that, okay? And share your work. Let other people see it. That's kind of a scary thing, but it works really well. I'd like to thank Pike TV for producing the show, theholler.org, all their efforts in promoting and helping the show, and I want to thank you, especially the viewer, for tuning in today and following along with me. Please tune in next time, but until then, keep drawing.